and welcome to the BS and Beer Show, where BS stands for Building Science. BS and Beer is an independent grassroots movement to share building science knowledge through our local meetup groups and this, our Zoom show. The Brew Crew and our guests volunteer our time each month to bring you what we hope is fun and informative discussion. Before we dive into tonight's building science banter, we just want to let you know that BS and Beer has some pretty cool sponsors. Tonight, I want to say a big thank you to Santa Fe, Dehumidifiers, Huber, and Logic Windows for their continued support of our BS mission to spread building science far and wide and have fun while doing it. Our hosts and guests still volunteer our time because we love it and we believe in building science and we believe in this community. So to help us keep the lights on and keep spreading the good word, we heartily thank our sponsors for the show. So on with the show. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from and, of course, what your beverage of choice is. While all of our friends know that you're tuning in now that you put your name and where you're tuning in from, don't forget to find your local BS and Beer discussion group or start one of your own. Go ahead and visit our new website at thebsandbeershow.com for more information on local groups, links to our past shows on YouTube, or to join the mailing list. A big thank you to IMW Group and Motif for their help with media and communications. And without further ado, let's raise a glass and listen to the announcements that Mike has to share.
The extensive announcements, yes. Thank you, Emily. I am Mike Maines. Tonight I'm drinking a Mountain Ale Shed from Vermont, a good miserable fall day beer. Tonight's topic is West Coast versus East Coast. It's not a rap battle, but how does location grab renovation performance? How does location guide renovation performance goals? With our good friends Josh Salinger and Rachel White. First announcement is Emily's sponsors list reminded me that we as part of our umbrella, we also have Green Architects Lounge. We'll share a link to that. It's a great podcast. If you haven't heard it, check that out. Coming up on November 18th and 19th, we have the U.S. Heat Pump Summit in Worcester, Mass. Their blurb is the U.S. Heat Pump Summit is a meeting hub for business owners and field staff in high performance HVAC and plumbing. Join your community in Worcester, Mass. as 40-plus industry-leading trainers and contractors share behind-the-scenes business practices, proven technical design, and install methods, and hear from startup companies that are innovating new heat pump technologies. I will add that there are a ton of great speakers in their lineup, including friends of BS and Beer, such as Ross Trethui, Nikki Kruger, Peter Trost, Scott Libby, and others. Emily will put that in the chat. Next up, we have our friends at Passive House Accelerator. Their Reimagined Buildings series. This coming up is their Best of Retrofits online conference, featuring our own Emily Mottram and Ben Bogie, among other illustrious speakers, on Friday, December 5th, starting at 11:30 Eastern Time. What you will learn includes envelope as non-negotiable, retrofits that scale, reuse and adaptive retrofits, bio-based and panelized retrofits, HVAC and fire safety in existing buildings, cost, supply, and logistics. And the organizers suggest organizing watch parties, maybe through your local BS and Beer groups. It would be a fun way to connect. We'll put a link to that. Next up is the Vermont Green Building Network is hosting an online talk with our friend Jacob Devereusen on November 19th, noon to 1 Eastern Time. The topic is bio-based materials. Jacob is the expert on that. He'll highlight their attributes, benefits, and applications from structure to finish. Product examples and case studies will ground the discussion in practical realities, spanning readily available substitution options to cutting-edge regenerative solutions. Sounds exactly like Jacob's sentence right there. Exciting. This is Building Science Week in Maine, a project of Passive House Maine, with a lot of local events. Check out what's on the schedule for tomorrow. We'll put a link to that. Unfortunately, that's local only, but maybe other places will start a Building Science Week. Maybe it'll all be the first week in November. One more Maine-based, but also online thing, the Maine Indoor Air Quality Council. They provide excellent training and conferences Some of their upcoming events include their Better Buildings Homes, their Better, sorry, Building Better Homes class, either in person or Zoom on Friday, November 7th. That's tomorrow, starting at 8:30 a.m. Until 12:15 in the afternoon, featuring our good friend Dan Colbert. On Thursday, November 20th, they have what they call the IAQ club session, investigation of spray foam insulation, odors, and air quality problem sources using air testing combined with bulk foam off gas sampling, featuring our friend Henri Fennell, who is also in the audience tonight. So I can't make fun of his extra long title. That'll be 4 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. We'll put a link to that. In person only on December 9th, 7:30 to 5:15, with AIACEUs available, is the IAQ and Energy Conference. It's always an excellent conference and worth attending if you're in the region, or maybe even worth flying in for. It happens to be 10 years ago where I met Emily when she was a speaker there. And last but not least, our next show will be Thursday, December 4th, with our friend Jake Bruton. As far as I know, the topic is to be decided, but Jake is always full of great knowledge and jokes. I will put it back to Emily for introductions.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Mike. I'm Emily Mottram, for anybody who doesn't know me, architect here in Maine. Tonight, I'm having a nice little ginger ale and bourbon beverage for the show. But I have the pleasure tonight of introducing both of our guests. Josh Salinger is the founder and principal of Birdsmouth Design-Build in Portland, Oregon. Shout out to all the people in the chat. Sorry that most of our announcements aren't for what you're doing on your coast. Check with Josh later. Maybe he has some updates. But he is a residential design build firm focused on addressing climate change through the built environment via zero energy new homes and deep energy retrofits. He's an instructor for both Earth Advantage Sustainable Homes Professional Program and PHIUS Certified Passive House Building Training Program. Josh sits on the board of Passive House Northwest and the technical committee of Zero Energy Ready Oregon. He's also an expert member on the Green Building Advisor and contributed to Fine Homebuilding magazine. Josh, what are you drinking tonight, and did I miss anything?
No, that's a great introduction. Thank you. And I'm having my friends at Migration Brewing here. This is a West Coast IPA that I'm having tonight. So I'll crack this one up now, and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. We also have Rachel White. She is the CEO of Big Meister Design-Build, a 43-year-old residential remodeling company that's striving to serve as an exemplary steward of existing homes and to prepare them to meet the challenges of the 21st century. Rachel has been affiliated with Big Meister since 2008, when she hired the firm to renovate her own home. What started as an effort to reduce her personal carbon footprint became her life's work. She serves on the Energy Commission in Newton, Mass, and is a past board chair of the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association, NESE. And before joining the building world, Rachel taught modern Jewish history to adult learners. She holds a PhD in religious studies from Brown University and a BA in religion from Haverford College. Rachel, what are you drinking and what did we miss?
It's so great to be here. You didn't miss anything. I'm not a big beer drinker, so I'm drinking a glass of red wine, which I neglected to look at the bottle. I just rely on my husband to furnish me with mine, and I drink what he furnishes. So
I've had your husband furnish me wine and food before, and he's very good at it. So that's a fair thing to do.
Sounds a great plan. Awesome. Well, I don't know which one of you wants to kick off. I know we have a couple of slides to start our conversation tonight. So whichever one of you wants to start the show, go ahead and share your screen.
Rachel,
Josh, sure, I'll go for it. All right. So let me tell you folks a little bit about Big Meister. Beyond what Emily said, so we've been doing this work. We're based in Waltham, Massachusetts, so just outside of Boston. And the work that we focus on combines, in almost all cases, improvements to functionality and livability, as well as improvements to performance, to comfort, to efficiency, reducing carbon emissions. Occasionally, we do projects that are retrofit only, performance only, but the kind of work that we like to do, we're really leveraging renovation. So homeowners reach out to us wanting to improve, get a better kitchen, to finish out their basement, add a dormer to get more bedroom space, living space. And we're looking for opportunities as part of those projects to also bring the home up to 21st century standards of energy performance. So that is the kind of work that we do. We do not do any new construction. We only work on existing homes. People often ask why that is, and there are a few reasons. And if I'd gotten the slides to show, I actually had animations, so this wouldn't have shown up altogether. But in any event, here we are, technical difficulties. So for one thing, we just love working on older homes. There are so many cool older homes in the Boston area of a wide range of architectural styles and vintages, and we just love the marrying old with new, the taking things apart, seeing how they were built, figuring out how to adapt homes to meet contemporary needs. The founder of Big Meister also liked to say when he was asked this question that there are so many existing homes in the Boston area in need of fixing that new construction would feel like cheating. And it's really true. We've been doing this work for 43 years. We could do it for another 43 years. And we would never run out of work to do. But there's also another dimension. We are ardent carbon cutters here at Big Meister, and we are committed to doing our part to help get the building sector to net zero carbon. Massachusetts, despite what's happening on the national level, is still, we have a legislatively mandated goal of hitting net zero carbon by 2050. And, obviously every building that's built between now and 2050 has to be a high performance home or a high performance building for us to hit that target. But that alone isn't going to cut it, because the vast majority of the buildings that are going to be here in 2050 already exist. That's true generally, but even more so in my home state of Massachusetts. And most of our building stock is small residential. Almost half is single family, and you put it together with small multifamily, and it makes up 2/3 of our housing stock. So those are the reasons why we work on existing homes. And lastly, I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to you, Josh, and save my other slides for later. I'll try to get the actual slideshow to work, is we strongly believe that every home can get to net zero carbon over time. We're not often, every once in a while, we encounter a project where we can do kind of that full enchilada and get it there. But often we're implementing, coming in, and our goal is to implement sort of the next best step along the path to net zero carbon, right? So there's the standard decarbonization playbook we're probably all familiar with: reduce the loads, eliminate on-site combustion, power everything with renewables. And we're just, when we step in, we're to a project, we're saying, what do we need to do now to help get this house further along that path? And I'll stop share and let you introduce yourself, Josh. Say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I mean, similar. Our company, we do new homes along with the retrofits, and it used to be that we were really focused on new construction. And I don't have the slide, but there's something out there that essentially says that if you were to add up all of the building that happens on planet Earth, it's the equivalent of a New York City once every 30 days. So there's, so much new building happening out there. So clearly we have to be able to make these new buildings zero energy, right? But similar, a few years back, our kind of ethos at our company is to address climate change through the built environment. And we just realized looking around us that there's no way we're going to be able to be serious about our mission if we don't also address existing buildings. And so we really took that as a team pretty seriously and started pivoting to, like, how can we address these existing buildings so that we can do kind of a both and with our new construction and with the retrofits too. Because we were thinking, like, if we're not doing it here in Portland, Oregon, and we're one of the few handful of teams that are really doing this type of work, who is? And so, like, we need to lead by example. And so I just have one quick slide that I thought I'd kind of share quickly. But this one is essentially saying that, if we were to meet the Paris 2050 climate accord, which it sounds like our current federal government has given up on that, but we'll, use that as a metric, we'd have to, retrofit 3% of all the existing homes year over year to be able to meet that goal. And there's no way to meet that goal unless we do this because the built environment plays such a big role in climate change. And like you mentioned in your neck of the woods, I think you said it was 80% of the existing buildings will
That's
be by
right.
2050. This is like a national stat, I believe. So similar, 75% will still be around. And we currently retrofit less than a half of 1% per year. And I even think that that number is probably a little high. I forget exactly where I got that particular stat. Um, but suffice it to say, like, we really need to start. This is very important to be able to do this. And anyways, I always kind of start with this slide when we start talking about retrofits to kind of frame the importance um, of addressing the existing built environment. So yeah, and it's not easy, right? And this is something we're going to get into,
No,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
no, it is not easy.
It's not easy. When we talked beforehand, we had like a great hour-long conversation that I think could have gone like 5 hours. So it's gonna be hard to get through this. But did you guys have a plan for how you wanted to attack some of those questions, or do we just kind of start in the beginning, which is like, how do you decide what you're gonna do?
That's probably a good
I,
place to start.
Mhm.
I completely agree. You want to start? You want to start off, Josh, and I'll jump in.
Sure. So I think this is the where to draw the line, question on how far do I take this retrofit, and at what point, does it make sense for me to spend any more money on this building, or at what point does it make sense to, maybe even start over completely? And so how do you figure that out? And every building is completely different, right? So we were talking about this in our earlier conversation, but what we do when someone calls us and they want to address, the footprint of their home, the energy efficiency is we need to figure out like where are the lowest hanging fruit. We need to figure this out. So we do a bunch of diagnostic testing to really figure that out. And so we'll do things like what we'll do is we'll start with a home energy audit. And maybe this is a good time to kind of share that report here. But we'll go through with our blower door and our infrared camera, and we'll document all of the systems and appliances and all this kind of stuff. And we'll craft a report. And this one I'm sharing here is from a recent project that we're just finishing up the retrofit. So this home here, this is a picture of it right here, and this is the home performance report that we did. And we do this to start out our projects to really figure out like where should we aim our resource gun, right? So as we go through here, you see that this house was built in 2010. It's a single story home, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, and it's about 2,423 square feet, right? And the clients would like to, do whatever we can to reasonably to move towards a passive home, but I'm not sure how much this home will accommodate that desire. For example, while it faces the southwest, there aren't a lot of windows on that side of the house. That said, anything we can reasonably do to make the home more energy efficient and improve air quality is fair game for discussion. So that's a really common request that we get, and then we have to figure out like, okay, where do we set the needle for that? So um, what we do is we kind of do like the classic Asian restaurant where you look at the pricing and it's like $1 sign or $4 signs. We kind of do like, okay, here's quick fixes, here's some good investments, and here are some big gains, right? And so we kind of frame things this way at this early stage. And we'll go through everything from the air barrier, kind of explain to people in our template where a lot of that occurs, and then we'll measure it, right? So this particular house was about 4.1 ACH 50, which for a 2010 home isn't terrible, really. Um, and we were able to figure out that these areas here were the biggest sources of leaks, right? So there was the fireplace and the hearth room. Pocket doors were really leaky. Wall outlets, plumbing penetrations, various windows and doors were not great, and light fixtures and cans, right? So then we gave them some options for quick fixes good investments, and then big gains, right? And then we'll hyperlink certain things here and there to that, right? I don't want to hijack the whole webinar for this, but we go through insulation, what we found, 16 inches of fiberglass loose fill, fiberglass bats in the walls, and did some infrared camera work showing some thermal bridging that was happening, especially on the conditioned crawl. And we give some, suggestions. Same with windows and doors, showing where some leaks are. Again, this door ended up getting replaced because it was such a huge leak that it was obvious once you put our infrared camera on it. And so anyhow, we go through the ventilation system, cruising through this, the ductwork. They have their ducts up in the attic, kind of semi-buried in insulation up here. So not terrible, but not great. What their heating and cooling equipment is. And on, water heaters. We go through that, talk about their appliances, what appliances they have, pictures of the can lights that were leaking like crazy up there. And then as we get to the end of this thing, we give them kind of a summary, right? And this is kind of where we start our work with them. Now that we've done this diagnostic testing and ran through this report with them, we summarize and say, this is where we think as experts here, and having done this testing and kind of crunched the numbers, this is where we think you should spend your money to get the biggest impact. And so this is kind of how we start the conversation with our clients, and we'll give links and all sorts of different products or videos or information that our clients can click on with this. And that's how we kind of start our process when it comes to retrofits, so that we're not just guessing like, oh, we think you should replace your windows, or we think you should just replace your gas furnace with a heat pump. We're really trying to
Although,
figure out.
don't you often know the answer before you put together the report?
Yeah.
Well, and I'd love to talk about this because I know, Rachel, you do like a slightly similar but different approach to it, that you whether or not you put together a report. And I used to do a lot of energy auditing. And fun fact, I listened to a webinar by Sam Rashkin earlier today, and he's like, we should all stop using the word audit because that makes you think about like bad things with taxes. I'm like,
It's true. The word choice really matters. It puts people in a certain frame of mind, right?
Yeah, and it's a valid response. That's really what we're doing. We're taking a look at what is there for the existing structure. But I can kind of get behind the idea that like maybe the word itself is not fabulous. Didn't love his choice on what he would say instead, but so I'll be interested to see. But Rachel,
Which was what?
It was like an energy checkup. And I thought nobody likes to go to the doctor either.
Yeah,
so my monthly checkup is like
no. I mean, we call it assessment. So I think
that's great.
I think we do not put together as robust a report as what Josh does. I mean, I think that we have, I would say, which I love that report, by the way, and but in any event, I would think that what's different about what we are, not different, but what you didn't mention, which I think we both do, is that we're also looking at sort of starting with health and safety measures. Like, are there any existing hazards that we need to remediate? And you said that house was built in 2010. Is that what you said? So it's like, you're not going to find a lot of like the things that we're looking at in the homes, so like knob and tube wiring, like asbestos pipe insulation, moisture and pests. What else did radon, right? That's a big one. I can't remember when we had our conversation. Is radon an issue where you are too?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. So that's part of the initial assessment as well, like combustion safety. Sometimes we are trying to remove all combustion equipment. We are not always removing all combustion equipment, so we're looking at that as well. So I would say the only thing I would kind of add to what Josh was saying is like that's a critically important part of that. Where do you start and what do you do?
You're totally right.
is,
Like,
yeah,
people live in these homes, right? Like, we need to pay attention to make sure that they're staying healthy. And when this particular house didn't have a lot, but a previous one that we had, one of the things we do is we walk around with just a natural gas sniffer. You can buy these things pretty cheaply, and it's always surprising to me, like the houses that I often think I'll find something, I don't, and sometimes you're just totally
right.
surprised. It's random, you know. And you can't see that. You don't always smell it, but that's a good thing to pay attention to. Um, and in another previous report we did, we actually had a client who bought a house who had a water heater that was used to heat their in-floor heating and their domestic hot water. And it didn't have a heat exchanger, which was a huge risk for Legionnaire's disease.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
so you would never ever do that. And I had pointed that out to him and he had no idea, right? And so, yeah, you absolutely need to pay attention, like first and foremost, like
Right.
make it
Right.
healthy.
Yeah. Right. So that's a critical part of that sort of existing conditions documentation. But yeah, in terms of board choice, we talk about an assessment. And what we do is we put together as part of sort of and I can share, it's not as so this is something that we put together. We do sort of test in and test out on all of our project. And so this is an example of one we had done as sort of test in that we were presenting at an early stage. This is, again, that sort of renovation plus retrofit. So at one of our early stage design meetings, I think maybe not the first one, but the second one, we devote a portion of the meeting to going through the things that we've tested. So in this house, right, the air leakage was a heck of a lot leakier than your your
That's pretty
your
good.
house
Wow.
built in
This
2010.
was
Actually,
outside.
Right.
and actually, this is the house, Emily and Josh, that you saw that's now under 2 ACH 50. So we can talk more about that later. But in any event, so in our process, we're waiting until we will do heating loads once we have an approved sort of, we call it a feasibility budget for construction, looking at radon. Combustion safety, we didn't do on this house because we knew that we were taking combustion out. We're going to test the flows of all the existing bath fans as well as the hood vent, which we didn't do because we knew we were getting rid of it, but there are some bath fans that were potentially going to remain. There was no ERV when we started, so nothing to test there. And we do do all the IR inspection as well, but that's not part of our sort of typical report out to people.
I think it's really interesting how both of you kind of handle that. When I was doing a ton of energy consulting, there was this like really interesting world between people wanting to have the full report like Josh does with things to click on and really be interested. On the other half of the population, just wanting a list that said, these are the things I need to do. And I don't know if you're going to talk about
People, they want different things,
There's a
they
bell
don't all
curve
want
of
the same
human.
thing.
Yeah.
yeah, so like
Yeah.
there's not a one size fits all to how we approach this.
But as a
Rachel,
business, we kind of need to pick a way and stick to it anyway.
Yeah.
totally. Well, who was it? Was it Rachel? You said like you kind of know yourself when you get into it before doing the report, but which is generally true, but not
But there are
always. Like,
surprises. And your natural gas sniffer is a good, or fossil gas, I should say, not natural gas, fossil gas sniffer is a good example of that, right? This is the reason why we do that testing.
right. You never know. I mean, sometimes it's obvious. You walk into a house and you're just like, okay, this thing is the single pane windows and it's just leaky. You know, air tightness is really going to matter there. Windows is a tough discussion, right? Because it's like, are we in it? And this is one of the things we talked about. Is this a historic neighborhood or house or something like that? Can we even do much about the windows? Do we want to do storms? Do we want to do replacements? Do we want to try to do some high performance, tilt turn that's meant to look like a double hung? Is that even allowed? Is it worth the money? Is there things that are valuable besides money, like comfort or, keeping pollens outside instead of getting in if you have, allergies and things like that? So even though you might know kind of like generally what needs to happen, you
You
don't
still
know.
have to do the actual, there's value in for us in terms of gathering the information, but then also presenting it to the homeowner.
Yeah. and every homeowner is going to be totally different, right? I mean, it's that bell curve of human behavior, like we were just kind of talking about. Like, you kind of need to quickly understand, like, what is the most important thing to this particular client, right? Is it their
Yes,
kids have asthma, or is it they're really like, they're engineers and they really want to try to save every last BTU, or is it they're just uncomfortable when they're watching movies, or what is it? Is it economics, And you really have to kind of not you do that diagnostic testing, but then you have to like fit that to that particular client. Um,
totally. And we can't help the people who only care about economics.
right.
Um, isn't
Yeah.
isn't that the truth? Like you can't just talk about it in economics. And one of the things that popped up, and Mike is curating the chat box for me because I can't follow that and do this at the same time.
Yeah,
Which
there are
is
67 comments in the
yeah,
chat. It's
like
insane.
how do you quantify like the carbon impact of what we're doing? Josh introduced historic commissions, which hopefully Rachel is going to talk about that in a little bit. But also someone asked, how much do you charge or how do you charge for this initial assessment? Because I think we all agree you have to do some kind of assessment. So do you guys do a feasibility study beforehand? Like, all right, here's all the stuff you need to do. Is it part of the process because they've already come and it's just step one and it's where you start? But like, I don't know if the how much do you charge is valid because that probably varies depending on, not only like what state you're in, but like even potentially what county you're in that particular state. But like, how do you handle that? It's just something that's part of it.
I mean, I can speak to that, and then Josh, you can. As I said at the beginning, most of our projects combine renovation and retrofit work, and then we are in the first phase of our planning process. We're billing by the hour, and so we basically we don't have an hourly rate for this work. We sort of it's included in like as part of the overhead or the markup on what we bill for by the hour. When we do performance only projects which don't have a lot of design time in them. We do a flat fee up through where we get to the point where we put together, in addition to sharing the test and results, we develop a scope of work as well as budget numbers to a plus or minus 10% range of the various options, and that we do for a flat fee.
We're similar. So if someone comes to us and they just want the feasibility or the energy audit, like I shared, it's $2,500. And that is, by the time we travel up there and do the blower door test, the duct blaster test, the infrared camera, the gas sniffing tests, pretty deep thing, it's really difficult. And then to craft the report and then present that to them, it's actually like it's a loss leader for us. It's not enough money. We're losing on that at $2,500, but we look at it as like it's most of those projects that we do that for, those people end up hiring us to take something else on, right? So that's if it's just a standalone thing. But if someone hires us to do, a design build where they're also doing a large addition or something else to the house, then it's different. That's kind of like the first part of design. And so it's similar to
Yeah.
what you're doing, Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah, someone in the chat, I think one of the first comments was getting clients to spend money to retrofit their home is difficult. Um, and one of our good friends here in Maine, Claire Betts, said, they like to slice through the butter and get straight to the one thing that they want to address. Like, how do you guys handle when someone comes to you and they want to do some kind of renovation, and then you go to look at the house and you're like, oh, your basement is wet, or your, windows are falling out, or whatever. Insert. I'm not as good with Josh on what you might have. I could probably guess a lot of the things that Rachel might run into, but like, how do you handle when somebody wants to do something to their house, but we're at a point where like maintenance needs to happen on other things? Like, how does that conversation happen?
Uh, well, I mean, again, it's different with every client. So, like, if someone came to us with a house that clearly um, needed to come down, I mean, like, if it was just a mold fest and it was just unhealthy and there, structural like damage or whatever has been done to it over time, I mean, we always just tell people straight up, like these are our observations. This is what we're seeing. And if they really want to ignore that and then continue on putting in their fancy kitchen or something like that, we will tell them that we just don't feel comfortable doing that. Like we're out. Like that I I have this, I can't do that to somebody. It's just not in me to do something like that. So that's an easy one, really. Like if it's that obvious, the hard one is where it's the borderline cases, right? And that's probably where the conversation really kind of lands. And it's like, well, yeah, like, I understand that you have a growing family. You need to be able to get this extra room. And your basement has a leak in it, but the leak only happens once a year. Where should they spend their money? Should they spend that on fixing that leak that happens once a year, or should they spend that, on expanding their home? And, then we'd get into stuff and be like, well, where is the water coming? Again, you have to just get into it and report back what you find. And like I said, that's like the Asian menu of pricing. Like we'll never know exactly what it's going to cost, but we know if it's going to be 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000 to deal with that, right? And we can say, well, we think this is $100,000 fix, or a $10,000 fix, or $1,000 fix. That's a place to start. I don't know, Rachel, do you have anything to
Well,
say?
one thing I want that immediately came to mind, and one thing I don't know how often I say this to people, but I often think it that the client is I mean, the house is our client too. And so maybe I do say that sometimes, but we are thinking about not just, you're living there in the moment, but what is the best thing that we can do? What do we need to take care of the house or whoever is going to live there? And I would say also most of the people who come to us are fairly savvy. They know if they have issues. And so it's not a shock to them when they have this conversation, which doesn't necessarily make it any easier, because I think what Josh was getting at is the hard part is like, how, where's the rub? Because people often can't afford to do everything that they want to do and what the house needs to do. And there's often with our clients like a strong overlap, but there are some things that, God, they wish they just didn't have to deal with X, right? And so those conversations are, there's no getting around the fact that they're hard. And I think the only way through them is through them, right? There's no skirting around them. And so, but we don't really encounter people who are just like, similarly, if somebody wants to do their kitchen and they don't want to fix their wet basement, like they're just not a client for us. And we'll tell them that, and hopefully that will influence their thinking. Like even if they don't end up hiring us, that they'll have heard that like very, clear message from us and try to, eventually get around to doing the right thing, hopefully, or not, but
Yeah. One of the things we work with people with is road mapping, so it's like, okay, we understand that you can't do it all now. Like totally, I get it, right? But what you don't want to do is something that you'd have to undo in the future to fix,
100%.
right? So we'll guide people if the basement and the kitchen were the thing, and we could say, hey, let's do your kitchen now because that's where it's going, but let's not let's not get in the way
Yeah.
of our future selves to fix that problem, right? Maybe that wasn't a great example, but to help people roadmap those things so they're not, you know.
We talk about that as like master planning. And I think that's often, I don't know if this is true. You have found this is true for you, Josh, but we're working often with people on multiple projects over their lifespan in the home. I mean, we've been doing this. I know Big Meister's been in business for longer than Birdsmouth, but we have clients who we've done like 4 projects with.
Hmm.
So we are often explicitly hired to do that road mapping or master planning exercise. It's like we're sort of thinking about, okay, we're taking the first step, but yeah, how do we set ourselves up for what needs to come next and not get in the way of I love that, not get in the way of our future selves. So we're often asked to do that explicitly, but even when we're not asked to do that explicitly, we're trying to bring that perspective to the table. But yeah, those decisions are hard, or those conversations are hard, I should say.
What are some other examples of things that the clients have a tough time biting the bullet to do besides the wet basements?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many options, right? Like, I was at one last Friday, right? And this was some folks who, growing family, they want to finish their basement, and they've got a 95% gas furnace that was having some issues. And the ductwork was original, but it was done poorly. So it was like, it would duck under the joists and run at an angle, had asbestos on it. But yet on the other side of the building, they had their water heater, their electrical panel, their plumbing stack, and all that. And it was a basement with a one story. And so all these ducts were going to heat the first story. So their budget was super tight, right? And they really needed the space. So they didn't want to address the gas furnace. And I'm like, well, this, like, if we could put a heat pump in here, we could do a ductless and get rid of these ducts altogether, which saves all of these like space problems. We could move it to the other side of the building next to all the other stuff, free up all this space. And but to swallow that, getting rid of like that, because he bought it 12 years ago, and so he still feels like there's some value there. And to spend 35, 40K on, like a ducted and ductless system for this house would just push them outside of their budget, even though it made so much sense. And we're in the middle of this conversation now, but it seems like they'll probably dig deep and make it happen because they realize that, again, like they're not going to save that money in dollars, but they're getting a lot of value. Like they're suddenly have all the headspace. Suddenly everything's all over in one spot. Suddenly they're off fossil fuels. Suddenly their electrical bills go down. Suddenly it's quieter. So, all of those things, you know. So that's what you have to look for. You have to try to find those things that hold value that beyond dollars and cents.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that. When you asked that question, Mike, I was thinking of a client. We're actually under construction right now, which is very similar. They had to dig so deep. They had this crazy, they had a gas boiler, but previous owners had installed a 3-to-1 heat pump system with one in the basement, one on the first floor, and one on the second.
Mm.
And they had the white line set insulation, so they were starting to get concerned about potential corrosion, and they had to dig so deep. But this we had to do their entire house because there was just no and they dug so deep, and it's just we can't control the outcome of those conversations, but we need to have them. And I feel very fortunate that we were able to like get to this place that we are, because I really saw no interim phased approach to electrification given what they were dealing with, like their existing systems. It was brutal.
There are so many like questions and things in the chat, but Josh sort of introduced it earlier, and I want Rachel to talk a little bit about this because Josh and I got to see this house. It's like, what do you do when you make a plan and the historic commission has something to say about your plan that does not go with your plan? And so, Josh, you can talk a little bit about any of your historic society, but Rachel lives in a particular area where it happens kind of everywhere. So what do you do then?
Do you want me to start with this, Josh, and then you go, or do you want to?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
this house that we explored, the house was awesome. And yeah, go for it.
All right. So this is a house in Lexington, Massachusetts, that was built in actually 3 stages. So this is the late 1800s, and then there are 2 additions. So what you're looking at here is the original late 1800s house. And we had made a plan. You can see that the siding is not in great shape at this house. And there's it's maybe a little hard to see, but some of it has been replaced. There are sections where you can see, and this house was subject to in where we live in Massachusetts, we have not just historic districts, we have historical commissions. And those are municipal bodies that have jurisdiction over buildings over a certain age, and it varies depending on the town. I think in Lexington, it was older than 75 years, although don't quote me, I could be wrong on that. And those homes are subject to a demolition delay ordinance. So the Historic Commission reviews these projects to determine whether they're preferably preserved. And this is not just for tear downs, this is for taking off any, including like it's siding, right? So if you want to remove siding, it's subject to their review. So we had made a plan to outsulate the historic structure, the original structure of this building, with wood fiberboard, and we were putting back. You saw, I don't know if you noticed the deep. We have the deep overhang, so we could tuck it. The roof is newer. We could tuck the outsulation under the eaves, and the Historical Commission denied us, saying that the siding is preferably preserved and needs to be. It could only be up to 10% of it could be removed and replaced. And so they imposed an 18-month demolition delay on this. So the demolition delay ordinance, they can't stop you, but they can only slow you down. And trying to incentivize retaining existing rather than demolishing it. So yeah, I think maybe I've gone too far in the weeds there, but this is something that we deal with a lot where we deal with it. Josh, you mentioned around windows. It comes up a lot around windows. We've had it come up around solar, and specifically in historic districts. So it's a real challenge.
Yeah, and I remember like looking at that siding and like looking up close, and it was just a terrible shape. I mean,
we brought out, so the public meetings law won't allow more than two commissioners to come to meet together at the same time, but we invited them to the house to actually see that siding in person, and they still stood by their finding.
yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because like if you're taking the big view and you're giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, like yes, we want to preserve the history of our the culture that is being expressed through our buildings and the history there, and like that's an important thing that deserves that, right? But we're also in a climate crisis in an industry that has a huge impact um, to the climate. So like how do you gracefully balance that, and oftentimes it's done through these regulations, which become really onerous and really expensive on top of something that is already very expensive. And so it dissuades people from doing this type of work. I recently was brought onto a project team. It was a homeowner contacted me, and there was an architect and a builder, and showed up, and it was one of these balloon frame houses. So it's like single stud from the second floor, or first from the foundation of the second floor, and they hang the joists off of it. And this was 1915 home around here, anyways. When they were built, they would just put the siding directly over the studs, so there's no insulation, just the siding, no WRB, no felt paper, anything, right? And there are ways that you can insulate those things, but this particular contractor was like, "No, we can't insulate this. It's gonna rot it." And it's like, well, that's not entirely the case. They wanted to preserve that siding. They didn't want to put similar, like, this wasn't actually a historic district, but similar thing where like the client was driving this time, didn't want to do the exterior insulation. The contractor didn't have all the information that he needed to be able to do this, to be able to insulate this thing properly. And it gets to be quite expensive and quite onerous, but you want to do the right thing. You wouldn't want to just leave it uninsulated. That would be uncomfortable, unhealthy, certainly energy inefficient.
Right.
So what is the balance there? And I don't know that we're going to solve that on this call, unless maybe Mike or Emily, you guys have
Well,
the
I
answer.
should just say the end of the story. So what we ended up doing at this house, which I didn't say before, is so they're going to wait out the demolition delay and then replace the siding because it's in bad shape. But in the meantime, we're proceeding with the project. So they're losing floor area because we are padding in to get the thickness of the insulation we need. And there are lots of compromises. There are places where we're using spray foam, like against an exterior wall in the bay window. And but yeah, we're making it work. So this client really wanted the exterior insulation and was really driving that. But yeah, so it's tough.
Yeah.
I think
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that really brings up a great question, something that we talked about, and kudos to Rachel because she gave a phenomenal talk at Nessie about the fact that like we're oftentimes doing a moderate energy retrofit. We can help more people if we aren't doing deep energy retrofits on 10 structures and we're doing moderate energy retrofits on 100 structures or whatever. Sometimes we have to decide whether we're going from the interior or the exterior, depending on what the scope is. Like we've taken off interior when we need to get to electrical or something. You know, we've taken off exterior when the siding is terrible. We have a retrofit project, and it currently has pristine metal siding. If no one touches this metal siding, we're leaving it on there. If you don't touch it, it'll probably be fine, you know. And so like until they get to that, so we approached it from the interior. But and I think maybe Mike, you put it in there, or maybe it was in the chat, but like oftentimes when we're thinking about this or a deep energy retrofit is we're throwing things away that aren't at their end of usable life. And like you had to make a lot of sacrifices in that project because the siding really is at the end of its useful life.
It's actually a perfect case for adding insulation to the outside, which we don't actually encounter very much. As you know, the fact that I'm even talking about that after that Nessie keynote where I'm like, we never do exterior insulation anymore.
But it had wide overhangs, which you never get. And it had, and you were going to put back probably something that was a relatively historically accurate siding on the exterior.
We were putting back wood clapboards, exactly what they have now, just new wood rather than old wood.
It'll be better than what it, is. Yeah.
Well, and when we're talking about retrofits, we also have to talk about the longevity of our buildings, right? Like this is something that's going to make this building last for many, many more years. And like not being able to address that when we talk building science, because this is the BS and Beer show, the first thing we talk about is water control layers. And that's the first thing you can't touch on this building because the siding is in whatever shape that it's in. And
we'll touch it in 18 months. It just, I mean, so literally now 12. I mean,
that's kind of the irony of it, right? Like don't touch the exterior of that thing, even though by doing it, you could make it last longer and,
Oh my God, 100%. I mean, 100. Yeah. I mean, there was this whole period when we got this determination where we were like, okay, are they going to go back and do the siding or not? Because that influences what we're thinking about what we were going to do on the inside and whether we were going to do on the inside. So it's also the irony is the historic commission is approving historical commission was approving up to 10% siding replacement a year. So if we just replaced it piecemeal for the next several years, they would be fine with that. I mean, the whole thing, just insane.
Wow. As expected, we're running out of
oh my gosh.
Oh really? Oh, man.
It's already almost 7
rapidly. Yes. So my question is when historic districts aren't a concern, and once you fix the bad or worse things, how far do you go on performance, or how far do you think we should be going on performance?
It's a tough question, like
sigh.
Depends.
It depends. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Massive house, pretty good house.
Yeah. I remember I thought it was so great when Rachel, you kind of did the whole thing about like we're not doing deep energy retrofits anymore, right? Because you had a really great point because like these things get to be so expensive and to a certain point, like what are we doing? We're just trying to prove that we can get this to zero when, if you would have just saved that much more money and it would be so much better and at writ large over all of the buildings that are out there, you're going to do so much better. And that hardest bit maybe in the future can be dealt with in a way or something like that. I mean, it's not a total loss, but it reminds me of like when we did the the head house thing, and this is something I got from
Yeah.
you, Rachel. Like, so we had a client that didn't want to use foam insulation, and they wanted to bring their mechanical equipment inside the enclosure, single-story house, and it was a vented roof attic, and so we had to make it vaulted. To be able to put their equipment up there, and they wanted to use really nice stuff. So they had a Zender, they had like a really nice Mitsu heat pump, um, and so we did this whole like, foam free, created the baffles. We had the Sega Myrex that we taped and we created this like conditioned area up in that space there. Put all that equipment in there, and for $300,000 later, their house looked exactly like it did after we did that work. And they still had the dark galley kitchen and the front door that like needed to be replaced. And it's just like, okay, we got it to zero, but like, wow, that was a lot of money and effort. And was that really the right thing? That's what the
I
client wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I think it is the way we have been thinking about it, and this is, I mean, it's 6:57, is like that place at where you transition from load reduction to electrification. It just we've moved a little more towards like a more moderate, like where that dial is where we're stopping load reduction a little bit sooner so that we have the resources to fully electrify. And yeah, but yeah, people also want, when Brendan Kavanaugh, my colleague, often says the real reason a lot of people, most people call us, some people call us because they want the head house, they really just care about performance, but most people also want the kitchen, right? So, which circling back to where we started, right? The real reason people call us is for the kitchen, and we're gonna, we're gonna fit performance into that. And so yeah, like in most cases, they're not going to be happy if we leave them with the galley kitchen and the front door that needs to be replaced. I don't know
Yeah,
if did that answer your question at all, Mike?
Sure.
Okay.
sure.
I think you brought up a good point there, where you talked about electrification, and this is something that we talk about a lot, especially as for us, it's common to have air-to-air heat pumps. However, like air-to-air ductless mini splits and the whole like change in refrigerant and like not a great point source, like you talked about the 3-in-1, like one
Distribution
on each
problems.
floor, right? Like
Oh, that
zero
was horrible, right?
distribution.
Mm.
Like putting this stuff into retrofit situations. Like there's never room for ductwork. There's never, room for any of this. And that a lot of times when people do an improvement, it's because like the heating system for us died, right? It's like I need to replace this right away. And so it can be really challenging where you want to move towards electrification. But depending on where you are in the country, and I really want to preface this, is you're just changing where your fossil fuel might be coming from, right? So we're moving towards electrification, but if you're using some kind of fossil fuel to create electric to get to your site, there's changes in that too. So
Well, we're all using fossil fuels just to one degree or another, but there's
absolutely.
still value to getting combustion out of our homes, I
Indoor
would
air
Right.
say.
quality for all of those who were watching in
And
the
it
chat
is.
box, people commenting about my indoor air quality monitors. I got at least one.
Oh,
And it is more efficient to, even if you're using fossil fuels to create that energy, to do that at a grid scale than it is like, in an individual
100%.
house. And if you get that house ready electric in the future, if that coal plant or whatever does get replaced, then at least it has that opportunity to grow into the future, right?
That's right. The grid can still get greener despite what's happening at the federal level, but fossil gas is as green as it's ever going to get.
Right.
Well, and if you're not in a historic district and you can put solar panels or something on your roof, right, you're also like
You're golden. You're
you're moving
golden.
forward.
Yeah. We didn't have time to talk about distribution with heat pumps, like the whole
Oh
like
my
put a head in every
gosh.
room kind of thing, like face palm.
Yeah, can we come
Uh,
back and do this again? No.
yeah, we could
I
talk forever. Like,
I think you could do like a whole series on retrofits and you just have to talk about different things. Like this week we're going to talk about why we can't take the siding off, and next week we're going to talk about windows, because I often have plenty of things to say about windows and not taking windows out. And there's so many facets, I think, to retrofits and renovations, and like how far do you take it and what do you do? And sending things to the landfill that aren't at the end of their usable life, or like I think one thing that comes up for us a lot is someone wants to do one thing. We talked about kitchens, but like let's just talk siding replacement. And the person who's going to replace your siding isn't going to look at your water control layer, right? And like that's our opportunity to make big improvements that are usually fairly cost effective. So like how do we start putting those things together?
Yeah.
So here's the deal. If we could figure out how to leverage those like those natural replacement plus the discretionary projects that like in order to do this improve the durability and decarbonize, then you talked at the beginning, Josh, about how you're trying to like set an example or be a model. And I feel like Big Meister is trying to do the same thing. But how do we take that and we make it so they're all the other remodeling companies and siding contractors, I mean, it's got to be at the GC, are doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, what is like when you're doing, if you do everything to best practice, right, or to quality, you end up with energy efficiency. It's just like a happy side
Right.
effect, But like part of the problem is people don't know what the best practice is, and I think that leads to kind of the way that a lot of the way that folks are taught in the industry. Like in Oregon, you can take a 1 hour open book test and become a contractor. It has nothing to do with anything about
Yeah.
teaching. But I would like to think that if people understood what to do and did best practices, that would go a long way. Um,
I think that would do a lot, but I also think there's a lot of just responding to what homeowners say that they want rather than, and maybe that's just a variation of what you're
yeah,
talking about with best practice of just like taking that holistic approach.
a
I
holistic
think,
approach, yeah.
yeah,
One thing we started doing too is when people would call about, hey, we want to do a kitchen or addition, we'd say, oh, well, hey, there's lots of contractors that do that, but we really, also want to electrify your home, get rid of the fossil fuels and all this kind of stuff. And we expected when we first started telling people this that we would just get an awkward silence on the other side of the line. But what we found surprised us is that most people were like, "Oh, that's
want that.
really interesting. I didn't know I could do that, or I didn't know that that could be part of this thing." And so it was like, well, were we just not asking people, right? Were we too meek, following them too much, and just saying, this is what something you can do,
Yeah.
and that's something that we do. And they really responded favorably to that, like, which was a surprise.
Well, that's what we do too. So I'm glad it's working out for you
Mhm.
too.
So sorry for anybody who tuned in that Josh and Rachel were gonna duke it out, East Coast versus West
Oh,
Coast.
that's right. Yeah, you guys do the
We
weird
didn't even
strapping
talk
thing.
about
Yeah.
we didn't talk about Rebel Foundations and the fact that you don't strap.
We didn't talk about that. Why don't you strap anything, Josh? Tell us now.
It,
The Northeast
well,
would
no,
like
I
to
think the
know.
question is why do you strap things in the New England? Because as far as I can tell, New England's the only place that does this. I mean, you go anywhere else in the country, it just doesn't happen. So, um, it's an extra step. It's a whole bunch of, body carbon and effort that you have to put in.
No, it's sequestered carbon. So
There you
Oh,
go.
sure. Yeah.
We're just gonna strap the hell out of everything.
Strap
Well, and we're
carbon
just
to
ahead of
the,
the game too. We're just trying to keep everything out of our air barrier with our strapping. So you leave our strapping alone.
Yeah, well said, Emily. We didn't also talk about dehumidification. There's so many
there's so
things we
much
didn't
to
talk
talk
about.
about.
Seriously,
Like,
I was going to bring up air to water heat pumps too as a distribution solution and for retrofits, like there's no time.
I think we're coming back.
I
what
think you'll
I
have
think
to.
that there's just not enough time to talk about everything that could be on retrofits.
That's
There was several
probably
people,
true on every show, though,
Yeah.
right?
there were several people in the chat box who were like retrofit series, like do a whole series. So
Yeah.
I think you might be on to something here.
Yeah, I think retrofits is just such a big thing that encompasses so much. It's like we really have to break it into like the separate components.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
that we'd stick to them. We'd be like all over the place in a second.
What's
Yeah,
the fun of that?
exactly. Well, everything depends, right?
Yeah,
It-
exactly. Exactly. Well, We are at our 7 o'clock hour, and I appreciate it. I think if we dive into another topic, we'll be here for another hour. So I wanted to say thank you to both of you for sharing your time. I think it potentially kicks off a good start to talking about retrofits, especially as, you put out there how much we need to do with our existing housing stock. And I think that there's a really big fit here for us to talk about that, how it's different in different areas too, like what we can do, how to make improvements, just the different housing stock we have in areas. So I appreciate both of you taking your time and hopping on with us tonight.
My gosh, this was so fun.
Yeah.
And thank you to our very engaged audience as well. Most stayed for the entire hour, which means you guys had good stuff to say. So
yeah, and not just thank yous here at the end, all kinds of still questions popping in there. Somebody needs to save the chat and find out what all these questions were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
impressive.
can't you guys do that as
We
the
can.
as the moderators? Can't you?
We can absolutely
Just
do that.
don't send them to us because Josh and I actually have to work tomorrow.
Right. Well, that's what Mike and Emily do. That's what they do the rest of the week. They just answer all the chat questions, right?
right. That's
guys
all
got
we
nothing
do
but time.
basically is
Yeah.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Good
Nice
night.
to see you all.
See
Yeah.
See you. Bye.